Welcome into another edition of In the Bonus. My name is Jorie Mickens, and on this episode of In the Bonus, I will be talking about a game I had the opportunity to watch between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, a game in which the Lakers won 128 to 99. And obviously, based on the score, it was pretty much a manhandling of the Thunder in this one. But I took some notes throughout the game, so I'll get into those. But just to on the surface, it was a very well balanced effort by the Lakers in this one. LeBron James, another great performance from him, 26 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. And he actually shot better from three than he did from inside the arc. And strangely enough, Oklahoma City, they mentioned on the broadcast, was entering this game at least, was very good at defending the three. I believe they ranked sixth in the league in opponents' 3-point percentage. So strange for him to have a better performance from deep than inside the paint, especially given the fact that he's also LeBron James with his body inside the paint, things like that. But LeBron shot 5 of 8 from three, 9 of 20 from the field. So 5 of 8 from three, and technically 4 from 12 or 4 4 12 from inside the arc for LeBron James in this one. Another player, Anthony Davis, who had a very good start to this game, had 4 early field goals for the Lakers. They obviously wanted to establish him early on, but finished the game with 18 points and 7 rebounds for the Lakers. So another solid performance for Anthony Davis. Off the bench, they got a very big helping hand from Montrezl Harrell, 21 points and 6 rebounds for him. And I think he landed in such a good spot. I was afraid of what would happen to Montrezl Harrell if he left Los Angeles. If he left, he didn't technically leave Los Angeles, but if he left the Clippers, that is, because I was afraid that a team would put him in a role that he's not necessarily suited for. But I think, again, coming off the bench for Los Angeles and just constantly working hard on the offensive glass, working hard on rebounds in general, and always being in the right position, offensively at least, to score and just clean up some of the misses from his teammates. I think he just does that so well. And he's not necessarily a player that needs play calls really to put up a lot of points. And that was evident tonight. Again, 21 points for him. So Montrezl Harrell, a great signing for the Lakers. Dennis Schroeder's first time back in Oklahoma City. He picked up 2 early fouls in this one, but he stayed in the game and finished the game with 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. He did shoot just 4 of 12 from the field, but I would imagine that has something to do with his nerves, again, returning to Oklahoma City after spending time there last year with that team with Chris Paul and SGA, who in this game, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 17 points and 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 5 of 12 from the field. So somewhat of a lackluster performance based on the way we've seen him perform in the past, SGA that is, but a rather solid game. He did lead his team in points, so can't necessarily knock him too much, especially since he's playing one of the best teams in the league. But that said, I guess some other notes. This was a matchup between the oldest team, given that being the Lakers, and the youngest team in the league. Oklahoma City, their average age is 24 years, 83 days. And in terms of the Lakers, 29 years and 151 days. And you can imagine, given that LeBron up there in age, Marc Gasol up there in age, Anthony Davis. I mean, he's relatively younger based on the rest of this roster. But, yeah, they have a pretty an older roster, to say the least, the Lakers. And I think that also just is the reason why that this team has such good chemistry, because there are a bunch of veteran players who know their role and understand that they're not going to get up necessarily 15 to 20 shots every night, but they're going to, if they do their role right, they're going to win games. And that's been evident here early on, as Los Angeles actually has had their best road start in franchise history, which is pretty incredible considering how good some of these Los Angeles Lakers teams have been in the past. But 7-0 to start the season, and Los Angeles is absolutely rolling to start the year. In terms of Los Angeles, I guess one more point that I kind of wrote down was Talen Horton-Tucker. Now, this is an interesting player indeed, for a lot of reasons. He's, I believe, the youngest player on the roster on the Lakers. Um, and he from just listening to Lakers fans talk about this guy, I figured, oh, maybe he's just another overrated Lakers player, someone who's not necessarily overrated, but gets too much hype because he plays on the Lakers, because he plays with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. That isn't necessarily as good as people make him out to be. But in the time that I did watch him, he actually looks like he has a lot of potential. And I think there were some reports actually earlier this week saying there were some teams. I think the Knicks were one of them. I think the Bulls might be another team that are going to pursue him in the offseason because they see the potential in him. And I see it too. I mean, his wingspan is ridiculous. He kind of reminds me, and this is not at all a direct comparison, but he somewhat reminds me of Donovan Mitchell, just the way he moves and, again, his length. I mean, his arms are so long, it's kind of ridiculous, but he handles the ball very well. And he actually had a few really nice passes in this one. He had 4 assists in this game, but his vision is actually for a younger player especially, it's incredible. So I think the Lakers, if they can somehow hold on to him, certainly going to be a nice piece for them moving forward. But I think if he finds another team that gives him a bigger role, because he did only play 13 minutes in a game that was a blowout, so you have to imagine that he's probably not going to get too much run this season for the Lakers. So if he joins another team and gets a bigger role, don't be surprised if this guy somewhat blows up on another team, because I can see the potential. I can. In terms of the Thunder, though, a few notes that I took. I mean, this was again, not the best performance for them. Again, it's tough when you're facing Los Angeles. They're such a great team, but I think the biggest takeaway, or one of the biggest takeaways that I have written down, was I don't know what position SGA really is. I don't know if he's a point guard or if he's a shooting guard, because we've seen him play in his early days with the Clippers. He played with Patrick Beverley. And then obviously last year he played with Chris Paul and Dennis Schroder. So, and then now this year he's playing with George Hill in the starting lineup, another point guard. So is SGA a two guard, or is he, I mean, he has the size and length of a two guard. He can shoot the three, obviously, but he also has a very good handle and good vision, obviously, and just the game necessarily of a point guard. So I don't know necessarily what position he is, and I don't know if the Thunder are going to continue to pair him with another guard, another point guard that is in the backcourt moving forward, or if they're going to say you're going to be the main guy here in Oklahoma City, and we're going to get those pieces around you, I guess, at the two guard, on the wings and things like that. I do like Lou Dort. He didn't have a very good game in this one. Just 9 points, all on 3-pointers, which is pretty impressive given that last year it seemed like he was a complete liability from three. But he made 3 of them in this game. So Lou Dort, another player on the Thunder that has a lot of potential, and he showcased also a nice array of dribbling moves. I think Lou Dort has more potential as a shot creator than people think, because especially in this game, he obviously didn't make his shots, but he showcased a nice array of dribble moves and an ability to just attack the lane and get his own shot. So I think in the future he could actually be a pretty solid player offensively. We already know what he can do defensively, and I think he's going to be more than just like a 3-and-D player for the Thunder. Other than that, though, it was really hard to tell like who stood out among their young players on the Thunder, because there's so many. They have Darius Bazley, who's one, Isaiah Roby, who I believe is a rookie. Aleksej Pokashevsky is another one who everyone seems to love. Hamidou Diallo, who was in the dunk contest not too long ago. Theo Maladon. So they have a lot of young players on this team, and it was kind of hard for me to really pick and choose to see who could potentially also be part of maybe that big three moving forward, or maybe they're just not even on the roster yet. And that could certainly be the case. I think that their young pieces I like, but I feel like they need another player on the level of SGA to really be competitive moving forward. And that's obviously going to take time, but hey, they got plenty of draft picks to get that done and get that player on the roster. But other than that, don't necessarily have too many notes left. But again, it was just good to watch these two teams. Again, I hadn't seen the Lakers play necessarily too much early on in the season, and I don't think I've seen the Thunder play a full game at least whatsoever this early on. But yeah, this was a good game, I would say, and it pretty much solidified my thoughts on how good the Lakers are, and I guess how much time I think the Thunder need to really continue to grow. But again, their future is extremely bright. Love SGA, love Lou Dort, and obviously the immense amount of draft picks that they have. They can continue to build up this roster. I have a lot of faith in them. So, two teams that, at least for the Lakers, in their immediate future, extremely bright, and then in somewhat of the distant future for the Thunder is extremely bright. But that's going to wrap up this episode of In the Bonus. In terms of more content, obviously, I'm recording this on Wednesday, so the James Harden trade did happen. So James Harden is now a Brooklyn Net, and we're obviously going to talk about that on this week's episode of the Full Court Report NBA show. Probably going to be, most of that show is going to be dedicated just talking about that with myself, Jorie, again, and then Chris and Justin. But I think Chris may have watched the Knicks-Nets game himself, and he might be he might be doing his own in the bonus potentially. So we'll have to see if that comes to fruition. If not, again, you'll certainly hear us talk about everything to do with James Harden and that trade this coming Monday. So stay tuned for that. But again, thank you so much for listening to this episode of In the Bonus. My name is Jorie Mickens. Once again, the Los Angeles Lakers have defeated the Oklahoma City Thunder 128-99. Again, stay safe, and thank you so much for listening.